I didn't envision my lawyer career being let me help insurance companies save money.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's time for another episode of the Ramos Law Difference Makers podcast. And everybody out there is making a difference. And so is my guest today. My guest today is Mr. Adam Detsky. He's one of our attorneys here at Ramos Law. And I thought it would be great to have him as a guest because he's such a unique and wonderful individual, a really big personality, such a fun-natured individual. And I think that you'll get a sense of just an overall great human being by hearing his story, listening to who he is, what he does, and how he makes a difference in the world today. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode with Mr. Adam Detsky. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. So I got to tell you, since you've joined us, it hasn't been that long, several months now. You just carry an energy about you, and I just want to tell you that as we start the show. There's something about you that's just kind of light, and you're always smiling with the team, and you're sharing little jokes and memes and thoughts. And to start off, just to let the audience know a little bit as an example of what I'm talking about, I was walking by the front desk just a couple of days ago, and you go, "Hey, I want to show you guys something. I actually ordered 50 of these for people around here." And I'm like, "Oh, what's that?" So I go, and it's a mug with your name on it that says, "Adam is awesome." And just to kind of make everyone laugh. It's so good. Have you always been that kind of a personality, Adam?
I was bullied a lot as a kid, and I would say I was bullied straight through college.
Really?
And it became kind of a defense mechanism, is to be able to make people laugh. It often comes out in a very dry sense of humor and a very sarcastic sense of humor, but that's how I dealt with it. That's how I overcame it. Is I had to learn to be able to laugh at myself, and I had to learn to diffuse very awkward, tense situations when these guys would bully you, because how else are you going to keep on being on, so it kind of developed out of that, and then it became part of who I am, to the point where now I'm well past that stage in life. I'm sure that somewhere out there my bullies still exist, but it's just ingrained in my personality now, so I can't even control it. 9 times out of 10, I don't even know that I'm cracking this joke as I'm saying it. So
wow. Well, you do have a beautiful and wonderful sense of humor. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to go back to that painful part of bullying. I remember as a kid, I was never, I grew up in a middle class home. Went to a Christian school because I'd got in trouble in elementary school. Elementary school, my parents said, "Okay, you might be going down the wrong path, so we're going to put you in a disciplined Christian environment," right? So I end up in there. So there's, my senior class had 32 kids in it. There wasn't a lot of room for bullying in that kind of environment in the school walls. Now, was there some? Yeah, but I was kind of part of that cool kid clique on one side, and on the other side, my nature is I hate people being treated unfairly. I hate people being bullied. So I didn't ever experience that, but my heart for even animals that get bullied, kids, women, men, it really does something to me. I can't imagine what it was like, the pain and how you dealt with that, besides having to develop the sense of humor. Would you mind sharing just a little bit about that? Because there's probably people out there listening or watching that have been, are, or have kids that are being bullied.
Yeah, well, I tell people, and now I'm able to talk about it a little bit more freely than I was even, say, a decade ago, because it sticks with you.
Yes.
It's so wherever I went, no matter where I went, somehow everybody knew, bully this kid, and it's really funny because you talk now, now you're older, you talk to these kids who are the popular kids, and they say to you, I was bullied a lot, right? And they were, it just wasn't quite the bullying that I mean, by all means.
A whole different deal.
It's you start to learn that a lot of people feel very bullied. Mm-hmm. And then you find out that a lot of people change their personality because of that bullying. And, finding yourself and overcoming that bullying, once you have a bully, you're not talking reason to that bully. You're not sitting down with the parents and being like, "Hey, your kid's doing this." All that's going to do is drive it crazier. You're not going to sit down with the principal. Now you got them in trouble. You're not going to change anybody's opinion. They've drawn that line. They have their clique. Their clique now knows that you are their target, or at least one of the targets. And then there's the other type of bullying, which of course is the complete ostracization. You know, like I remember in high school, I'm like, yeah, our high school never throws any parties. And someone said to me, "Is like, there's a party every weekend." And I was like, oh my God, you know, that type of, you know, there's the bullying, like you're not welcome here, and the bullying, like we're just going to silently exclude you.
Right.
And, you know, everyone has to deal with that on their own terms.
And so you weren't that kid that said, oh, I'm going to do what I see on TV and punch the bully in the nose and make it stop or any of that kind of stuff. Because that takes a whole different, that's a different thing that now in today's world is not welcomed at all either. Right?
No, it's not. And, you know, then you turn to these kids and you kind of expect them to navigate this because the problem's not going to go away. And there's very little they can do to help. And once you're in that cycle, you know, it's very hard to break it. And
Yes.
all you can really tell these kids is you have to learn to be yourself. And, you know, unfortunately, the answers aren't going to necessarily come right away. Because part of the problem was I was being myself, and myself wasn't finding out the thing. You know, nobody was taking the time to be like, Adam, let me pull you aside. Let me tell you some of the things that you do. That
were you a lot
annoy
different?
us.
Does that mean you were a lot different as a kid than the other kids in how you were being yourself?
I mean, truth is, I'll never know the origin of it.
Okay.
What I do know is that there was a lot of you know, the best way to probably say this is I tried so hard to get people to notice me and talk to me and include me that I was actually doing a lot of like really bad things. You know, I was being annoying. I was being obnoxious. I was doing awful things because at that point, just anyone noticing me and including me and talking to me made me feel better. And I didn't care if I was like target of bullying because they were at least acknowledging my existence, which was an upgrade for people.
Were you self-aware that that's what you were doing for that reason? Or were you just, it was just the action that was happening now looking back, reflecting, you're like, that's why I did that.
It's reflection.
Got
you
it.
know, part of it was just, hey, you know, I didn't have any friends, so I was kind of left with my own imagination and ideas, and there was no real guidance system there. But you know, part of what you have to just keep encouraging people is you have to be yourself, because you know what, as you learn, as people take the time and be like, hey, Adam, this is something that you do that is making you a target that you can easily change without changing who you are as a person. You know, be it nose picking. Like as a kid, I was a thumb sucker, but which came first? You know, was I a thumb sucker because I was bullied and alone, or was I a thumb sucker first and then and that led to the bullying? You know, is it the chicken or the egg?
Yes.
You know, so you it's a really hard place to be, and that's where you start to learn about things and hobbies and getting interested in things. And what I always tell people is, you know, you get good at something. You know, it doesn't have to be sports. It could be chess. It could be online gaming. It could be anything that interests you, but get good at it, because when you get good at it, then there are people who are similar to you, who like that same thing, or see that you're zest for it, and they'll talk to you about it, and then slowly but surely you start to get those interactions that you really need.
Get a community,
right.
Get confidence.
Correct. You need that experience. You need those friends who like you to say, hey, you really have bad breath every day. Here, have some gum. Or you should really, keep getting caught picking your nose, or hey, you did this in that meeting the other day and everybody noticed and looked, and I'm sure they made fun of you for it. And then you start to learn, you start to pick up these mannerisms. And what I learned is there's infinite value in being warm, in having a smile on your face. Even if it's like, yeah, I hate you, with a big, huge smile on your face, but you have a smile on your face, you're pleasant to talk to, and you treat people with respect, and they'll eventually, maybe not in high school, because high school kids are just horrible human beings and incredibly rough on kids. But, as you get older and as you get more comfortable in your own skin, I was actually saying before you came in, I was telling a story about my brother living in Colorado. He came out to New York to visit me when I was living there, and we went out to a party, and at the time, you're living in New York City. You need the nice threads. You need the black shirts. You need, I had like 30 pairs of shoes at any given time, and I hate shoes. I just like a diva with like my wall of shoes. Like which black shoe do I? Oh, that one has a white heel. I can't wear that to this place. And my brother comes in and he's wearing his Timberland shoes and his ratty rundown jeans and his flannel, and he didn't give a bleepity bleep bleep about what people thought about him. And I remember watching it going, that's where I want to be.
Yeah. How was he older than you or younger than you?
2 years older.
2 years older.
But he had that materialistic New York lifestyle, that always having to look good, and he just reached that point, that Zen moment where he's like, I'm comfortable in my own skin.
So
and
good.
I don't give a blank what these people think about me. And if that girl in the corner wants to make fun of me because I'm wearing flannel and ratty jeans to this party in New York City, fine. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I sat there with this, it was like an epiphany. It's like this moment like, hey, this is where I want to go. This is the direction I want to lead, to get to that point where I'm like, I'm comfortable in my own skin and I can talk to people. And hey, you know what? Some people aren't going to like me. Some people are going to look at me and be like, this guy is weird, or this guy's got a few screws loose, which is all fine. As long as I'm comfortable with who I am, as long as I know I'm a good person, as long as I know that I'm proud of who I am, then, and I'm getting there. And I wouldn't say I'm there yet. I'm getting there. There are definitely times where I'm around people who are either wealthier than me or just better dressed than me. Like, for example, we have Bradford here. Bradford is always is the yin to my yang, man.
Yes.
That guy is dressed impeccably. Like my shirt, I'm just shuffled like 5 minutes after I walk in the door. My shirt's hanging out, my tie's like dangling, I'm like, I already have 20 people to call back, and he's looking pristine all the time, and it cracks me up every time.
It's so funny. Did you, as you were going through this, it sounds like you kind of kept it to yourself with respect to not sharing it with your parents and maybe not your brother. Did you end up getting treatment through mental health professionals or anything like that to help you navigate that? Because now what I really love seeing is, especially with all the online bullying, which is a new thing that, you maybe didn't have to go through because there wasn't such, online presence at that time or social media. It seems like now there's far more talk about, hey, no matter what is going on emotionally, mentally, that health is every bit as important as your physical health. It's okay to talk to someone. Was that part of your development?
My mom is a psychologist.
Oh,
so
okay.
But even then, I didn't want her to know. I kept it from her. I didn't want her to know that, hey, your son has no friends. Your son is being bullied constantly. Your son is afraid to go to the cafeteria because of what might happen and goes to sit in the library for lunch every day. I shielded her from that. But why, you're asking kid logic for that.
Yes,
but once I found outlets, people who would talk to me and listen and just let me vent, that was a tremendous gain. I came here recently. I worked at another firm. I actually had a psychologist who was 2 floors down in the same building. So like once a week, Thursday at lunch, I just go down and have my counseling session. And, I'm a believer in it, especially because everyone's got their problems, and, they'll listen to you and they'll help you to an extent. They don't want to hear you always upset. You don't want them to be like that. You want to be able to use them when you need them, but you don't want to take advantage of that resource. So just going somewhere and having this conversation for an hour where it's just meant about you. It's not even, and sometimes they'll talk about themselves too. They'll give their stories. They'll tell you how they relate, but it's about that. Just let me just talk. Let me just get some things off my chest. And it's very helpful. And I'm a big believer in it. And I'm a big believer in it, even if you don't have anything to talk about.
Amen.
There were days where I went in there and the session ended after 20 minutes. I was like, okay, nothing's really bothering me right now. And nothing has to bother you. It's just, hey, sometimes it was just nice to have.
Yes. So good. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that those are difficult conversations to have, and to go back into personal pain is different than going back into personal triumph. So the fact that you'd be willing to open up, especially so early in the show, and just share that with people, I appreciate it. And so now to kind of just build from that and evolve into where you are now. When did you know you wanted to be a lawyer? How did that process start for you?
The truth is, well, I think I was born and raised to be an attorney. My initials are actually AJD. So my dad, everybody knew it. You know, that was always the intent. You know, and when I would tell you openly and honestly that when I graduated college, I knew at that time I was not mature enough to enter the real world. I was not there yet. I knew that I was beginning that journey. Where I was starting to realize who I was and what I was doing wrong and what I could do to be better. And I was only just starting to put the pieces together. And I knew I just wasn't ready. So law school was like a logical choice. Parents were willing to help me with the bills, although, most of it's on student loans, but they're willing to help me stay in school, by funding like where I live, making sure I'm on a food plan, things like that. And I decided to go and it was never like I didn't want to do it because I knew I had some interest in the law. For example, I told you about mock trial. I was actually in a pre-law class at the University of Maryland, and this professor, Dr. Myrick, he comes in. He was a longtime family law professor at the school, and he had a course that was taught basically like a law school. It had a law school textbook. He would call on people Socratic method style, like you never know when you're going to be called or what the question's going to be. And and you had to have that reading done, and you had to learn these cases, and you had to know what the statute said. And I loved it, and I thrived in the class. I got an A in that class, which was hard to come by for some of those classes, and I rolled another year, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come out for the mock trial team?" Which is, a competitive team. Now at the time I'd never heard of it. Now it's in basically every college and every high school I can think of.
Will you describe what that is for people who may have not heard of it or who it's new to them?
Sure. So mock trial is a pre-law activity where basically some sort of overseeing body gives all these schools, all these classes the same case, and it vary by state or organization. And it's a convoluted case that could be argued from both sides, and you're expected to learn to argue it from both sides. And then what happens is you form a team. Some people will be on the plaintiff side or the prosecution side. Some will be on the defense side. Some will play witnesses, and you put together two sides of the case. And you go
both sides. So you prepare both sides.
Both sides. Well, the team prepares both sides.
Yes, right.
Individuals might not. Like sometimes you might be an attorney on one side, a witness on the other side. But you prepare both sides, and then what happens is you go and you compete against other schools, sometimes in your area, sometimes beyond. Like for example, in Colorado, we have a huge high school competition that's very, very well managed by some great people. And what they do is they'll have their competition, and then the winners of their regionals will go on to a grander, less local Colorado competition.
Right. So a regional or a national or something like that.
So more like local to regional, and then the top teams go on to a national where they go against other states, and that was kind of the missing piece for me when I was looking for myself. Is now I had this team of people who were respecting me for who I was
and what you brought to the team,
and ideally, I don't know, I'm not in their mind, but ideally, that's what it's saying. Okay, you are helping us, you are providing us a service, and we like you because of that. We like that you're willing to work hard to make us as a whole better.
Did you have a specialty within the team? Like, were you the guy that could really argue well or answer questions very well, or maybe it's not built like that, like a quarterback versus a receiver versus a linebacker on a football team? Is a mock trial team the same way where you have specialists, or is it more generalist where you just rotate through all the?
No, to the contrary. I was actually a last semester recruit because they had a couple people quit, or either they quit or they just weren't performing, and they brought me on, and I was kind of like a pinch hitter. And I came in, I stepped in as a witness role. I always remember that case. It was the college level, we have like 350 schools that do this. And I came in, the case was it was a products liability case involving a person who had his own private plane that crash landed, and they were turned out after an investigation, or at least as the plaintiff was arguing, that there was a faulty fuel gauge. And the faulty fuel gauge was reading half tank of gas versus no gas.
Oh.
And the defense, of course, was arguing, saying there's nothing wrong with the fuel gauge. You just either weren't looking at it, or something else was going on there. And that was the case that year. Every year they try to mix up the cases. It's not products liability every year. We alternate civil, criminal, and I'm still involved with it. I still do it to this day. Now. What is it? I competed with and I don't want to give away my age, but I competed with University of Maryland in 1999.
Wow.
So now 23 years later, I'm still doing it. I'm on the board of directors for the college level organization, which includes 350 colleges, about 7,000 kids each year, and we host about probably 42 tournaments across the country every year. It's a huge thing, and it makes a big difference. And a lot of these kids, a lot of them go on to law school, a lot of them don't, and what keeps me going in it is knowing that I'm doing this mitzvah, I'm doing this service for them. I'm doing my part to help this organization to give them the best experience ever, which of course is funny because they all hate us. They think we play favorites with this team or that team, or that we have an agenda, or that we have some hidden plan going on to really mess with their team, send them to the hardest tournament, make their life as hard as possible, change the case because we knew what they were doing in their case and we really wanted to make sure that they weren't going to win. All these grand conspiracy theories, and we're literally just a bunch of 30 volunteers who give up our time and energy to help make this the best possible experience for them.
Isn't that funny?
Hopefully 20 years down the road, they reach that point where they realize it.
Yeah.
But a lot of them don't. A lot of them, years later, they're they're still bitter. Oh, that judge screwed us. And I'm welcome to the real world, pal.
Yeah, that's right. So it doesn't always go your way.
That is my average day in litigation. Is this judge screwed us? So
speaking of that, you now work with us in the litigation team and helping cases get to a point where if they're going to go to trial and be basically judged by a judge/jury situation, that that their case is as buttoned up as they can be. And do you guys always win as a team? No, but you win a lot. And so I'm wondering, what was it that drew you to personal law in general and litigation specifically? What does that bring to you? Why did you do that? And what's your passion in there?
So, it's when I got out of law school, so many people are I want to be this type of law. I want to be this type of law. But a lot of people, if I was guessing, I'd say 75% of people, they end up going into the career that hires them. So in other words, if they find a job in employment law, they're going to go into employment law. If they find a job in corporations and contracts, they're going to go into corporations and contracts. For me, in my area where I was in New York at the time, the easiest and most prolific hiring was insurance defense personal injury. So I ended up getting hired by a firm where I would basically just handle defense of personal injury claims.
Meaning that the person who had hit the other party, that person's insurance company was trying to say, hey, to mitigate the damages that they were going to have to pay to the quote unquote victim.
Correct. Or find some way to pay as little as humanly possible, and I did that. I drank the Kool-Aid for that for a long time. I did it for over a decade. And it was time for me to apply to be partner at this big national, international law firm, 800 plus attorneys. And I'm I don't want to apply to be partner. And they're like, why don't you apply to be partner? I'm I don't want to apply to be partner. They're why not? Because I see what your life is and I see how miserable you all are. And one day, it's hard to explain. I woke up one night in the middle of the night and I said to myself, I have spent my whole life trying to save for-profit insurance companies money. And then not only that, but then they question how I do it. They'll audit the files. They'll be okay, well, you billed us 1/10 of an hour for this phone call. It really was less than that, wasn't it? And it's just no. When I went to law school, granted, part of it was maturity, part of it was not ready to graduate, but I didn't envision my lawyer career being let me help insurance companies save money. That's not anywhere on my list of priorities in the legal profession. and it came to pass that a job opened up here in Colorado. At this point, I'd already moved to Colorado, and a job opened up at a plaintiff's firm, and I had a lot of doubts, whether I could do the job. When you spend so many years drinking that Kool-Aid, where you just genuinely believe that every case you see is a fraud for a reason, because if cases get to a point of lawsuit, it means pre-litigation failed. It means there's issues with that case. So when you were a defense attorney, you weren't seeing the 100 cases that they settled for fair value. You're seeing the ones where this guy has this unreasonable demand, or this guy has all these prior injuries, and you're seeing the ones where you have genuine issues that make you skeptical about the case. And it took a while. It took some adapting, and especially from a explaining point of view, because, when you're dealing with insurance companies, they know litigation, they know the processes, they know the steps, they know what needs to be done. When you're dealing with personal injury plaintiffs, people who are hurt, they don't know the system, they don't know the process, they don't know the steps, and for them, answers can't come fast enough. They're hurt, they're in pain, their car's destroyed, they need to get to work. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They're on Medicaid. They're not getting hours, so they're not getting money, so they're not getting their car fixed. They've overpaid on their car because they bought it in 2021 because of the chip shortage. Now the insurance company's offering them $10,000 for a car that they owe $20,000 on, while their back hurts and their employee's not letting them come back to work. You have to explain all this to them, and they don't like it. They don't understand it. You have to make sure they understand it and the reasons behind it, and you have to do your best to guide them through it. And it's a lot more fulfilling. So I don't know if that directly answered your question.
It's beautiful. It's amazing because it shows that you were taking that energy that you'd felt like what I'm taking, and this is my inference, is when you were having all those painful years growing up of being bullied and being taken advantage of in many, many ways, or not being noticed. I see now, I can relate that directly to now, you're putting yourself as the champion of those folks who, through no fault of their own, have been put in a similar situation from a completely different set of circumstances, where now you were on one side of that, and then eventually you saw where, hold on, these guys are already incredibly wealthy, doing incredibly well, are trying to stop this guy. And is there some fraud? Absolutely. But when someone can't get right, they deserve to have a champion. And they don't know the steps. They don't know the actions. Everything that you just said, and what it just really shares in my heart is that you've now taken, instead of the bully, you're taking on the bully.
It's actually a great metaphor. I've never really thought about that like that, but it is. It's no matter what, we're always the underdog on the plaintiff's side. These companies, even if they go to verdict and we get $1 million against them, they don't give a blank. They don't care. It's a drop in the hat for them. The claim rep moves on. Like, they get the verdict, and 5 minutes later they're on the phone with another attorney talking about negotiating a case, or asking for a status update. All that matters is their file papered. Did they get the review from the supervisors? And so be it. So it's sad, because I think to me, one of the hardest parts of this job is so many people call me up saying, look, I don't want money in my pocket. I want my medical bills paid. I want you paid. I want justice. And I have to explain to them, like, hey, there's a certain element of this that isn't justice, because you know what? That guy isn't losing his license and going to jail. They're not losing their home. We're dealing with insurance companies, and all you can do is hope that the insurance companies are going to these companies and saying, hey, if you want to continue to drive, if you want us to continue to insure you, if you want us to continue to help your property and protect you, you need to do these changes. But it's hard, because ultimately, criminal law is criminal law. There's jail, there's real repercussions. But some of these people, they cause a bad accident and they walk away from it. And it upsets me. It upsets me because I'm a big believer in personal responsibility. But at the same time, I also understand that we're in a system, and our job is to work within the system while trying to improve the system, and make the system, change the system as much as we can to make it work for the people who need it the most.
And Adam, what you said there just literally hit me like a hammer in my head. Of oftentimes these people, I think on one side the system is what it is, and I would like to see it improved. The other side, I think people don't understand or are not educated about how they should work within the system, specifically with coverages. And I want to get your thoughts on this because, and you can go into this in more depth, but what you were talking about earlier with an insurance company, basically allowing a person to walk away from their injuries. You and I have seen it in this firm. If we've seen it once, we've seen it 100 times, where someone doesn't get all their medical bills paid because either the one person was uninsured, meaning they didn't have insurance, which is illegal in our state, but it happens all the time, or B, they were underinsured, meaning the medical bills and the lost wages and everything is exceeding the amount of coverage that the perpetrator, defendant, or whatever had. In other words, in our state, minimum $25,000. If there's $50,000 of damages done in bodily injury, et cetera, that company gets to wipe their hands after the $25,000 and then say, now it's on you. And the person that gets hit is like, wait, it wasn't even my fault. What do you mean it's on me? And they never knew that they could protect themselves with underinsured and uninsured motorists, med pay, these kinds of things. I mean, it bugs me so much, but I want to get your take on that.
So back in New York, we had no fault insurance, which was, it doesn't matter who caused this accident. We have $50,000 towards your medical bills, which was meant to curtail litigation because people were getting the help they needed. So I moved to Colorado. And when I moved here, I thought it was a no-fault state. And, it was a no-fault state. It used to be,
right? Yeah, back until 2003.
Right. And then I turned to people and I said, what happened? And they said, well, about now 15 years ago, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, the insurance companies went on this big advertising binge. And they're like, we can save you a lot of money if you guys vote to take us from a no-fault state to a med pay
at-fault state.
At-fault state. Mm-hmm. And so, and they convinced a lot of people who just don't have this education, and they explained it to them because they appealed to the lowest common denominator. They said, we could save you money.
Yeah, your premiums will go down.
Right. But what they didn't say to them is the way your premiums will go down is by you agreeing in writing to waive these coverages that every human being never thinks they're going to need. Nobody sits there and goes, I'm not going to get in an accident. I'm a safe driver. Of course, it has nothing to do with them being a safe driver.
Right.
There's a reason why they're called accidents. Accidents happen. Of course, I try to avoid that word because there are also crashes.
Yes.
And it comes from carelessness and recklessness. But, not everybody who causes an accident is a bad human being. But they turned to these people and they said, hey, we can save you $150 every 6 months if you agree not to have this special coverage that will protect you if that other guy doesn't have coverage. Or we'll save you $100 each month if you agree to not have this med pay coverage, which if you got it, that would be $5,000 that we will pay you for we'll pay towards your medical bills that you don't have to pay us back. And not only that, but now we actually have a problem where they've actually convinced people to the point where people are like, I don't want to ask for med pay. I don't want to open up an underinsured motorist claim. I'd be like, why not? It's like, because my rates will go up. And what I tell people is, these people are scum of the earth. Your rates will go up because you drive on Tuesdays. Your rates will go up because you get gas at Exxon. Your rates will go up for whatever BS reason they pull out of their tush.
Yeah.
And the only thing that matters is they're not going to say to you, we're raising your rates because you got into an accident and you made a claim. That's an accident that wasn't your fault.
And in fact, in our state, I don't know about, outside of our state and in a couple others, they cannot raise your rates for using your own med pay and underinsured because it's not even coming into play till the bodily injury. The other guy's insurance is exhausted. And I just had a phone call yesterday, literally one day ago, of someone who was so afraid of, and she's pretty damaged, so afraid of using their insurance that they pay a lot of money for uninsured motorist insurance and med pay because she had a property damage claim where a car ran through her garage, totaled two 2 cars, created $100,000 in damage, and because it was property damage, their insurance went through the roof, and she didn't understand that in the bodily injuries section, that doesn't apply. So it is out there that you need insurance, but you're afraid to use it, and that to me is a shame.
Yeah, and it goes back to bullying, right?
Yes.
They've convinced this market that we could save you money by giving you these coverages that you don't need. That to me, it should be a crime. It should be illegal. Like UIM coverage, underinsured motorist coverage, MedPay, that should be standard, required on a policy. You cannot waive it. I don't care how much it saves you every 6 months, because you know what? Everybody gets into an accident eventually. Everybody does. And when they need that help needs to be there, because I've done those phone calls where I've said, hey, this guy who hit you, no insurance, driving a stolen car. You don't have underinsured motorist coverage, right? This guy doesn't have an asset to go after. And
and now, even if you have health insurance, you got to pay the copays, you got to pay the deductible.
And I've done that call many times, and it's awful. It's just an awful feeling inside, because you're basically telling these people, like, hey, even if I did everything I could to help you, it wouldn't help you. Yep. All we would have at the end is a worthless judgment against a guy who we're never going to be able to enforce it against.
Yep.
And it's rough. It's one of the hard parts of the job. The rewarding parts of the job is when you get to hand someone this big check and be like, hey, thank you for going through this whole process. I'm glad we got you better. I'm glad you're back to normal health. Here's a nice check. That's a great feeling, but unfortunately, that's only part of the job. Some of the job is delivering bad news and having to explain to people that bad news, and it's rough because they hired you to help them, and you did help them. You just have to face the realities of what the circumstances are. What they do to take advantage of people is disgusting. It really keeps me up at nights that there are people out there who, Colorado's got one of the highest car theft rates in the country right now. And when that guy who hits you in a hit and run in a stolen vehicle drives off, if you don't have that coverage, you're in a bad situation no matter what we can do. And there's not an attorney in the country who can change that situation. Yes. And it should be a crime.
Yeah. And you talked about people getting a big check at the end of the day is a great feeling, and it's a great thing. And I think that one thing that we should discuss quickly is a lot of people out there go, oh yeah, there it is. It's all about the money, and these people weren't hurt, and they're getting more than they deserve. And I want to make real clear that we see these people's lives every day. And imagine if you've never been in an accident, the amount of pain that one goes through, because these are heavy vehicles, even if they're going at slow speeds, if you have any previous injuries, anything that can be magnified under trauma, it's going to be magnified. In fact, even in sports injuries, the biggest cause of an injury is a previous injury, right? So if you have arthritis, you get hit or something goes wrong, you're suffering. But then you've got emotional damage, and then people don't understand you, and then you're losing wages and all these other factors. So, when we talk about the sums of money that we get for clients, it's not just to say, well, let's take how much, see what the slot machine will pay out. It's literally saying, this is what the case is worth and why. Because this person's going to be suffering for weeks, months, years, or the rest of their life. And I think people, they just don't realize that because of some crazy commercials that, where attorneys are talking about they got gajillions of dollars and make it look like, oh, they didn't need that and they didn't earn that. And it was just all, excess money. So I just wanted to make that point.
We talk all the time in various settings about prejudice in society and racism and just every form of hate that you can imagine. But one that really people talk about is this implicit bias that if I don't see you crippled, you're not crippled. So if you're not walking around with a cane or a wheelchair, if you're not limping, you're not actually hurt. And they don't see, because that's what we want. We want them getting back to work. We want them on their feet. We want them kind of powering through a little bit to a certain extent to get that body moving, to get them back to their normal functionality. And you're walking around with a severe lower back pain and neck pain, and people don't see that. I still remember this one time when I was younger, back when I was a little bit fitter and I'd go to the gym more regularly, there was this guy who was parked in a handicap spot, right? Anyone looking at him, he was perfectly healthy. And someone left this absolutely nasty note about how he's scamming the system. This guy had severe MS. And he had symptoms that just didn't necessarily manifest themselves in a way that anyone could see. but he was most definitely disabled. And this person left this note on it. And I still remember just being so mortified because I just realized that, hey, and it's the same thing with the jury. You have to overcome the stigma with a jury. When that person walks in, when your client walks in and they're sitting there and they're healthy and they're fine, you know, they don't see a cripple. They don't I don't want to give someone $500,000, but they're not seeing the 3 years, 4 years of treatment, of going from doctor to doctor, giving up your lunch hours, you know, trying to get through the day to get to the chiropractic, get the manipulation that you need to just function for the next 2 days until your next pain management doctor appointment. And, you know, another thing that I kind of started to learn on this side is that people don't realize how valuable we are in terms of helping them get to doctors. They have this kind of image of, oh, ambulance chasers, and they're going to get you to doctors, they're going to trump up the bills. It's like, no, we deal with thousands upon thousands of cases. And you see what doctors get results. You see what is a chiropractor and what is a quackopractor. You see the physical therapists who are getting results versus the ones who literally just shove their head at the computer and monitor everything. You see the pain management doctors who manage to actually reduce the pain versus, okay, well, I've done what I can do for you. You know what orthopedic surgeons are successful and actually treat someone better versus the people who you don't even meet them. They show up at the operating room. And it's like, and so we can help them. We can guide them. We can get them to the doctors that are actually going to make them better. And it's not because there are people. You know, I don't know these people. You know, there's a facility I've sent like 25 clients to already. Like, I don't know a single person there. I couldn't name one single person there. But you know what? They take Medicaid and they get results. And when you have a Medicaid patient, that is so hard to find. And we can call them and we could say, hey, get you in here. And then the defense attorneys will come in like, oh, look at that. They're sending all these people to Mountain View. You know, I don't know these people. I couldn't name for you one person who works there. I don't care. You know, what I care about is I'm getting results. I'm hearing from my client every month or so, and they're saying to me, Adam, these doctors are great. I feel so much better. This doctor that my health insurance sent me to, they didn't do anything for me. You know, and that's a very rewarding thing too, because you know what, like you said, I talked about the money before, but it's not about the money. It's, hey, I got you help at a time when you needed help, and I was there for you at a time that you needed someone to be there for you, and I let you vent when you didn't want to vent to everybody else. You know, there's a certain element of psychologists. There's a certain element of care that you just don't get from average people anymore. You know, it's a state of society, but it also just says, hey, you know, when you work with these people long enough, you see who gets results and who doesn't, and who's going to make this person better and who isn't.
You know what, your passion, like this is, you and I have talked a handful of times since you've been here, and I've gotten a chance to visit with you a little bit, but your passion in a situation like this just comes out. And that's why we've gotten so many great reviews about the work that you do. And it's just been super exciting.
Thank you.
What is it, if anything, that drives you to be so great about this that maybe we haven't talked about? Is there anything that you either get from your work or that just really sets you into that motion of being this dynamic? Because it's palpable. I'm sure the people watching and listening, when we started talking about, you know, I mean, when we start talking about what you do for humanity, especially those that people, you know, we'll call them victims, I mean, your personality came to life. It filled up the whole room. What is that thing about?
You know, I wish I could tell you. It's you have to enjoy life. And like I said, it's whole life. You know, I'm 46 years old. You know, my life to this point has been a journey, you know, of finding myself, of learning who I am, how to make myself better. And, you know, you don't get that if you don't love life. And, you know, and when people call me up and I get assigned a case, you know, this is someone who's not loving life. And, you know, I can't make someone a happy person. I can't bring them joy. What I can do is the best job I possibly can for them, and let them know that there's someone who hears them and doesn't look at them and judge them and doesn't hold anything against them and is actually sincerely trying to help them. That comes across. People, not everyone, I've certainly received a couple of complaints here and there. Maybe I didn't, when you have the same conversation 150 times, you kind of forget who you've had it with and who you haven't. Maybe I told it, maybe I forgot to tell someone this, but, all you're trying to do is say, hey, look, you're not alone. And sometimes you're going to feel alone because your husband's not going to relate to your back pain. They don't feel it. Your kids are not going to relate to your back pain. Your coworkers are not going to relate to your back pain. Some of them are just naturally going to think you're faking it because they see you walking around, but I get it. And they need to hear that. They need to know that they're not making this up. This pain is not in their head. That's very legitimate. Their joints are out of whack. Their bones are out of alignment. There is severe disc desiccation that they need help with, and it's all real and it can be visualized. But you just need to help them, and you need to support them, and you need to point them in the right direction. And what keeps me going is I know that if I don't, I did them a tremendous disservice.
So powerful, man. You are doing great work and great service. I want to ask you one more question.
Sure.
With all the things you've shared with me, your life has been a journey. And most of us, as we go through life, we meet mentors or we pick up information along the way or we develop our philosophies. Is there any one piece of advice that you've either been given along the way or that you've found to cling on to be a really, really ingrained and deep part of your fabric that you'd be willing to share with me and our audience?
I mean, the one thing that I always tell people is you have to know who you are. You cannot be the conformist. You cannot, even if you agree with everything you're conforming with, you have to find who you are, what makes you happy. And you can't let others around you limit you for that. You can't let the people who you make your circle, who you make your inner trust people, you can't let them be your guide in your future and your decision makers and judge you. You need to be happy with who you are. You need to be comfortable in your own skin. And when you know who you are and when you believe in yourself and when you understand these things, so many things fall into place. So many things, more friendships, more opportunities, more confidence, more skills, just a generally happier life. And it gives you a lot to live for when you find it.
Man, that was beautiful. You are a beautiful soul, my friend.
Thank you.
I appreciate this time so much, and I really feel blessed to say that I get the chance to work with you alongside you, watch you do what you do in the theater of protecting these people. And so thank you for what you do. Thank you so much for all that you've put into our firm already, the quality that you've brought to us. And, I wish you nothing more than continued success. And if someone wanted to reach out and ask about your journey, maybe they've been bullied and they have a question, or maybe they've been in an accident and want help, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
The best way is to email me.
Okay.
It is A as in Adam, D as in David, E as in Echo, T as in Tom, S as in Sam, K as in Kite, Y at ramoslaw.com. And if I can, just for 1 second, put in a plug for last week's show, because the Denver cat company, Cat Cafe, is the greatest place ever. They recently remodeled. My wife's like home away from home. She loves that place. I'm sorry. I found out that the owner came in and did one of these podcasts and I missed it. I would have been here. Like, I'm your biggest fan, like I told you before we went on the air, like I wouldn't recognize an NHL player if I was sitting right next to him. But this woman, I'd be like, oh, you are the greatest. God bless you. You're doing such a noble service for so many cats who need homes. And it's just a great place. So just plug in that, since I know that's your guest in the previous week.
Yep. We'll make it happen, and I'll connect you guys, and we'll all go do something. We'll all go hang out at the Cat Cafe with her.
Firm bonding event at the Cat Cafe in Denver.
Done.
It's on Tennyson in that beautiful gentrified, which good thing and a bad thing area. Yeah. But it's just a great place. I highly recommend it to everybody.
Nice. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for the time. And again, thank you for all that you do for us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, for those of you who enjoyed this, please send it. If you were inspired by someone or by something that Adam said, not only about his job, but also about his journey. There's so many people that understand that they need help. Please send this to them, watch it again, listen to it again. If there's a guest that you'd like to have or a subject you'd like to talk about, please send it to us as well, and we'll do our best to get that done for you. If you have questions, let us know. You can always reach me directly at jim@ramoslaw.com. So until next time, remember, you too can make a difference.